How's it going, everyone? We are back with another amazing interview. This is one of my favorite series of so far of our podcast.
Mine too.
So I'm excited to bring in our guest, and Casey's going to do that. And stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll be back. The Business Project Podcast.
Business can be complicated.
We break it down so regular people like us
Can understand and find success. I'm John Crespo, accountant and consultant.
I'm Casey Bryant, marketer and event planner.
If you run a business
or want to run a business,
welcome to the show.
welcome back, guys. We are so excited to have another amazing guest. This is such a great series. I just think that we could do this forever. We just need more people.
It's so much fun.
Yes.
It's a blast for sure.
So this is our guest, Kevin Kennedy, and we had the privilege of interviewing your father last week. And so this is going to be so much fun because you guys are very different, equally awesome, but very different. And so, Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for the opportunity to speak. Certainly followed in the footsteps of my dad from the day I was out of the womb. So I'm used to this, coming in the shadows of him. But I really like this project that you're doing, giving people very practical steps to launching a business, creating a vision from simple practical steps. I've followed along the journey. And so if you haven't from the very beginning caught some of their episodes up to this point, I would encourage you, stop this one, start back from the beginning, then you'll eventually make it back to us now. But this project is a real blessing to our community. So thanks for all of the effort and intention that goes into making this.
For sure.
But I'm Kevin Kennedy Jr., or as affectionately as I tell people around the community, the other one, the Kev that does not have you covered, right? And I'm a Clarksville native. My dad may have shared some of his story last week or on the last episode. But we grew up here in Clarksville around the Trenton 101 area on a horse farm there. I grew up there. I was the fifth generation that was kind of born on that farm and grew up there, went to public schools all the way through here, and went to Austin P and came back. Now I'm a pediatric dentist. I have a practice here in town that's called Spring Creek Pediatric Dentistry, which is really a nod to my family. They spent forever. My grandfather drew water from Spring Creek that runs around Trenton area. They all went to Spring Creek Baptist Church for generations. And so that's why the name of the practice is what it is. And so I've been there maybe 4 years now. I've been back in town practicing about 10. So that's where we are.
I love it. Well, not only do you have a practice, but you have a podcast as well.
I do have a podcast. Yeah.
The pleasure of being on it too.
Yeah, both of you have really great episodes. My goal has just been to help share the stories of people who I think are making a positive impact in our community, both professionally, but also in the nonprofit world. But also people who, maybe their job or title doesn't lend itself to someone being super impressed, but they're just authentic, dynamic people who make our community better in lots of ways. Part of the reason why I started that podcast was in order to share the stories of people who make this a better place to live. And I knew that as Clarksville grows, there's going to be many podcast projects, digital, things like Local Clarksville, things like this project. And I knew I wanted to be a part of it. And so kind of that entrepreneurial spirit kicks in a little bit of like, don't do this. Don't do this. You don't have time for it. You don't have time for it. But then the idea doesn't go away. And anyways, you just, kind of give yourself the confidence to launch into it. And so we're about 30 episodes in, just get great feedback on it. It's called Clarksville Vibe. You can find that on all the podcast platforms. And it's been really fun to catch up with people that I do know, but then I've also had several episodes with people that I didn't know. And those are some of the fun ones to do as well.
Yeah, we actually met in person on your podcast.
That's how it works.
Like that's where we actually met. So, and you've had some great guests.
I appreciate that.
I follow along as well, and I really enjoy it. And I think that it's great that not only is it meant for Clarksville entrepreneurs, but everyone around the country or around the world can even look at it and glean some good gems and that come from what people have to share, because it affects everyone.
That's the kind of people we have living here.
Yeah.
That's Clarksville, is that both, not only do we get to hear the story of, let's say, Grant Doofman, who had a recent episode, he does food product sales to all of our local restaurants. So not only is it fun to hear Grant hear the story about how he got into food sales because he started working for the chopping block because he was pouring concrete for the owner's husband and wanted to get into air conditioning, but it's also nice to hear someone who's on the back end of the food scene who can talk about what are the challenges for restaurants to open anywhere. What is it like for restaurants to survive these economic conditions with inflation and product prices going through the crazy roof? And it was just a fun episode that we did recently.
Yeah, I think that is one of the, you had mentioned just another thing to do. And I think that that's one thing that we struggle with as entrepreneurs in general. And a lot of people that are watching can probably relate to this. And if this is your first business or you're just getting into business, you just wait because it'll hit you too. But I feel like there's so many great opportunities.
And what I would say is it's really a gift because, naturally, I kind of believe God gifts us with certain things. And I think it's Patrick Lencioni that talks about a gift of wondering, right? And I notice myself wondering a lot. And it's the central just kind of theme of, I wonder why this happens, or I wonder if we can add value in this area. But that's not everyone. Everyone doesn't have the gift of just thinking and creating a wonder statement. Some people are more supportive. Some people are the natural encouragers. They would never come up with the idea of a podcast, but they have a natural gifting of cheering you on from the sidelines and helping you get that idea to fruition. And so I've kind of had to naturally embrace that as much as I want to squash some ideas. I also have a tongue tie center that runs simultaneously with my dental practice. It's a little bit niche. We help moms with breastfeeding difficulties if their baby has a restricted mouth or lip to some degree that they're not able to feed appropriately. And I'm really one of the only people that do that in Middle Tennessee. And it was one of those just kind of like, no, you can just stay in your lane, or you can use some of the gifts that you have, create a little bit of niche in this market, and yes, provide a great service, but really transform some lives. And that's probably one of the most fun things I do is have a 2 or 3 week old baby, mom's in tears, dad's looking at me like, dude, just do something. Please help us. We cannot sleep. And then we perform the procedure and mom feeds right after, and it's great. And it's not always that snip snap, but it's a blessing to be able to do that. And I say that because if I didn't really follow this wonder gift in some ways, some of these things, we wouldn't be able to bring our gifts to the community.
For sure.
Yeah, that is so good. And I think let's get into that a little bit, because I think a lot of people that are working or starting a business, they start it because either they appreciate the money that comes for it or it's something that they're passionate about. But I think it's really easy to get lost into the day-to-day of your business and forget your why, and also look into how can I use my gifts beyond just what I'm doing. And I know you're very passionate about that. And I'm very fortunate to have my kids that go to you as a dentist. And it's just an amazing experience because you can feel that in what you do. And so talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah. Number one, I think you mentioned it. A lot of people start businesses because, hey, we all have bills to pay, right? And you start a business and now you got lots more bills than you did before. But that energy is not sustaining. I tell people the goalpost of revenue and profits is always moving.
That is the truth.
You go from 1-0 to 2 to 3, and eventually it's never satisfying regardless of where you get to. And I think if you're wise enough to engage mentors who are 1 or 2 seasons ahead of you, and they may be 2 or 3 zeros ahead of you, and they will tell you that it's not engaging or sustaining long-term anyway. So you really do have to kind of ground yourself in some sort of rooting that is not financially driven. Finances help guide us along the way, and they help maybe set goals so that we can kind of make that next step. But ultimately, for me as a dentist, I know that I have a gifting of being able to connect with kids and perform a very niche surgical skill really fast, really safe, and really effectively. And so we've had to just then develop our team so that when we have to intervene with a kid, or when we, maybe have to perform a procedure, our purpose is to help the child through this medically necessary procedure in order that we can make something that is maybe broken or something that is decayed and then restore that, right? And so from a spiritual sense, or like a biblical sense, basically all of creation is broken down, right? And the kingdom is restoring things back to the way they were intended. So my job as a dentist is actually really easy to find real purpose. Like You see a tooth with a hole in it. Literally decaying in front of our eyes. And we get to be a part of the process to stop the decay, to stop the brokenness from increasing or occurring. And we get to restore it back to the way that it was. And so what I tell our team is it's really, really easy to get in the rut of just thinking over and over again, oh, here we go. We're going to clean these baby teeth, clean this, run this polishing cup, drill on this tooth, get this kid numb, pull this tooth. But in reality, we get to be involved in something that's greater than that. And if you don't really spend some time in developing that idea in your head, you're going to get burnt out really, really quick.
Yeah. What comes to mind for me is somebody that is a performer. They're a singer, right? You get on stage and it's like you have sung the song 5 bazillion times. And I can imagine it gets so boring and tedious to sing the same song over and over again. And I could see that in a lot of professions, especially as entrepreneurs, and like what you do. It's like you go in and you do the same thing over and over again. Yeah. It's like numb a tooth, pull a tooth, whatever. But it's what brings, I feel like, such a more rewarding experience as a business owner is, like you said, figuring out, why are we doing this? And every day that you go in, remembering why we're doing this. Sure. I don't know how performers do that. They just, all the time, it's like this is the first time that they've ever sang the song and in front of a huge audience, and they make it so fun.
Well, they do. And then the flip side of that is also some of the most tragic outcomes in pop culture are when performers or entertainers, find that end of the road is empty and they resort to whatever that may be. So their performance is electric, right? But their meaning or value behind it, maybe they're not rooted and grounded into something that really helps them find value in it. And we see these tragic stories where someone who's on top of the world seems hopeless or seems without real purpose in what they're doing. And yet we all look at them from a distance or look at people of the past and think, how could that person not have seen what they were bringing to the world? And then in our small world, whether we're detailing cars or teaching school or, putting toilets back together as a plumber, we get stuck in the mundaneness of some of our jobs.
Yeah, that's so good. That's very true.
It is. And, you were saying something very important is really, as I was listening, is how important it is to understand your gift, right? Because everyone has a gift, and every gift is important, right? So understanding the importance of your gift and just looking at it as that, a gift, and then being able to present that to the world is what really drives people to be able to do it long term.
Yes.
Right? Because without that knowledge, without that understanding, without that awareness, then you're easily burnt out, right? And not to say that when you know it's a gift, you're not going to have burnout. Because I think that you're called to do something that's not easy, right? And I think a lot of business owners are called to be business owners, understanding that you're going to go through a journey that's going to tax you. It's going to knock you down. It's going to, beat you up. But what you're bringing, what you're creating, what you're presenting is changing your environment. So, that's really the motivator. Yeah. Is that piece of it. Yeah. So that's the true definition of a business owner that can do it for the long term. Yeah. Right.
And leveraging people and their gifts around you. Yeah, I'm fortunate. I've got an amazing team, 5 stars all the way around. I couldn't do what I do without them. They're my biggest strength, 100%. But I don't have another person on my team who's really a wanderer. That's not necessarily their gifting. And it's not that I don't welcome that. That would be kind of cool to have. But what I've got, in terms of the working genius model that I mentioned, Patrick Lencioni kind of articulated that. And I would encourage a lot of small business owners just to spend some time, maybe even on his podcast, looking through that of how these different giftings are available. But I've got people who are really good at encouraging. They're really good at discerning. They're really good at galvanizing other people. And then they're really good at just getting things to the finish line. And I love to finish, And so as your business grows and you start to leverage other people's gifts, now you can also really bring gifts to the team without guilt that I don't have a gifting in every area, but what God has gifted you with, you can bring in, and I don't have to feel threatened by it, and I don't have to feel guilty that I don't possess it. Now we're just working together towards this team so that everyone can accomplish the goal.
I would say the important thing around that is making sure you have the right team, right? So
Yeah.
Very critical.
Understanding who you're putting in that seat to support the team, right, is important as well. And that comes with a lot of work.
It comes with a lot of work.
Yes, it
there's
does.
a lot of trial and error in there, and it can be disheartening.
Sure.
But once you have that team in place, and the ones that understand their calling and their position and their power, then that's what's really gonna push you along.
And what I've learned is I'm new at this. I had 3 employees to start. We've grown to maybe 15 or so now. But when you're communicating to them that you value and you care about them, they expect you to protect that also. And so sometimes that is the hard job as the leader of saying that, hey, we've got to pivot this function, or we've got to pivot the way we do this, or who is leading this charge, or who's a part of our team right now, because I've got to protect the group so that we can still move forward. And it's never that a person is not able to bring their own giftings and they're not counterproductive to the goal, but as a team, we may need to move in a different direction at this point.
Right.
Yeah. I think having a strong team is so important. And I think having we talked with your dad, the difference between confidence and, what was it? And being, I wanted to say cocky, but that's not what
he's got
humble.
both of those.
He's very humble. He's
Yes.
very humble, but he's very confident.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think that's one of the things that makes a really great leader also is recognizing that we're not going to have it all. And I think as business owners, when you're getting started, you are the accountant and you are the HR department and you are the one that creates and you are the website developer and all of these things. And it's like, but you have to get that out of your mind that, you can only figure out what your strength is and what your talent is and run with it. And as a confident leader, know that you don't have to do it all. And it's 100% better if you don't do it all. If you surround yourself with people that are better than you in those areas.
Yeah.
I would say some of the hardest though for business owners is being able to let go.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah. I'll give you a real example. I like practical examples, right? So if you're a fan of The Office, the show, there's an episode somewhere along there where Michael Scott, who's the office manager of The Office, he leaves Jim Halpert in charge for a short season. And Jim has this great idea. Hey, instead of doing 4 birthday cakes 4 times this month, let's just put them all together and we'll do one birthday celebration for the whole office. And it ends up where people come to him and they're like, hey, I want an apple pie. And he's like, okay, apple pie it is. Next person comes here, I heard you were doing an apple pie. That's not fair. I don't like that. I want this. And the whole kind of subplot of the episode is how Jim tries to be overly practical in celebrating everyone's birthdays, and it really bites him in the face. And everyone's unhappy. No one likes the way he's doing it. And he was just trying to do something right. And at the end of the episode, Michael comes to him and says, oh, yeah, I tried that one time. That never worked. And my point in saying that is I'm Jim Halpert. Every time I look at that, I'm like, oh, that's a great idea, Jim. Like, why do it 4 times? But it's not necessarily, if I was in charge of making people feel celebrated, if I was in charge of consistently showing appreciation, I really, really struggle in that area. And it's not that I don't appreciate people. It's just, it's not my gifting. I really struggle in it. And I have to engage the gifts and the strengths of others in order for the whole team to feel appreciated. And if I was protective of that and said, no, only I'm going to set the budget, only I'm going to decide who signs the card, when the card's given, what we're going to do for that, or how often we're going to do it, no one would feel appreciated. Birthdays, anniversaries, whatever it is, that is not my gift. And I have to let go of that for what I really actually want to accomplish, which is everyone feeling appreciated.
Right.
Yeah.
That goes a long way.
So tell us a little bit about I feel like this is such an amazing conversation. We were not really expecting for that portion of it to last so long, but it is so great, I think, because this is some stuff that everybody can walk away with. It's so important. So thank you. But tell us a little bit about mentors that you have and books that you read. I know you listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
So tell us some things that you do as a business owner that help build you up.
Podcast wise, I love the Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast. Craig Groeschel I'm probably a little too similar to him. So when he talks about his rigid routines and the habits that he develops, it really resonates with me. So I like his communication style. He's very, very practical, short 21 to 24 minute episodes. And he's just punch you right in the mouth right from the very get.
Nice.
reading wise, I would love to read more. I do prioritize that some. It tends to be really just targeted on topic where I know that I need to grow in that. But mentor wise, I try to have a mentor for different sectors. So, you know, there's no one person that I want to grow into and at 65 say, this is exactly who I want to become. I don't think God made anyone for us to put them on a platform that way, but I do have some mentors in 1 or 2 seasons ahead of me in the pediatric dental world who know what it's like to go from 5 employees to 15 to maybe 55 employees. I've got some in the spiritual world, some in the parenting world for sure. You know, I think a lot of parents, we probably rely on ourselves too much and don't really leverage the wisdom of people who are grandparents now and give us some perspective that's multi-generational. And let's face it, if we're not really hitting it consistently at home as a spouse or as a parent, we're not bringing our full selves to work either. And so our business will suffer if we're not intentional with those. And so I guess that would be my one piece of advice of figure out where someone is good at, whether this is a business mentor or maybe this is a family mentor or a parenting mentor, and then leverage that and be okay with them not being a full mentor. And maybe they're great at parenting advice, but they're maybe not the person to help you grow in your business. And that's okay.
Right. I guess, you know, the mindset of you don't have to do it alone. You know, you can leverage those around you that are a couple steps ahead of you, or those
And
around
you better.
you. Yeah. Like if you don't, then you're,
Yeah.
I don't want to say dumb, but come on.
Well, you're going to cost
You know?
yourself
Yeah.
a lot of unnecessary expended resources in terms of time, money, energy, whatever it may be.
That goes very much along with the same theme. Also, we talked about that within your team, you know, figuring out different people that have different gifts. And I think with the mentors, it's the same thing.
Absolutely.
Find people that are good at different things and
Yeah.
bring them, ask for help. I think that's a lot of people are afraid. I was afraid to ask your dad to be on our podcast because he didn't know me and I didn't know him. That was the first time we met. But he was very happy. He even called me afterwards and just thanked me for being on my podcast. It was awesome. And so, but I think that I took that as a lesson as like, you know, people enjoy helping other people. And I think as business owners, we're scared to ask for help and we're scared to ask for mentorship or advice on things, but do it. Find people that are ahead of you and ask. What's the worst that could happen? They say no.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're very siloed, you know, and that's a detriment. You know?
I think a lot of that is out of a maybe a misguided sense, and I don't want to say it's intentional. It's probably undiagnosed, but a sense of pride that you don't want to acknowledge to someone that you don't know what you're talking about. Because I mean, call your first round of bankers and try to get a loan and act like you know what you're talking about when you don't. It's incredibly humbling. And what I found is I've just kind of gotten to the point where I'll talk to someone in an industry that I don't know. Let's say it's banking, and I'll say, "Buddy, I'm just going to tell you, I don't know what you're talking about. Explain this to me like I'm, you know, in 3rd grade and help me understand this." And they're more than happy to do that.
For sure.
Yeah. So we want to be very respectful of your time. We're doing so good with
We
our
are.
time.
I
Yes,
love it.
I know. It's so good.
We're getting better as time goes on.
So
with
first,
every episode.
yes, tell us how people can get a hold of you, and then I want you to give us a takeaway. We're going to talk about how people can contact you, get a hold of you, in case they want to look up where they can find your podcast.
Yeah. So podcast is Clarksville Vibe on any podcast platform. It's also on YouTube. You can find it there. Professionally, it's Spring Creek Pediatric Dentistry. We're physically located out in the Sango area, and we do Clarksville Tongue Tie Center also. So if you Google either one of those, you know, that's your best friend. You'll get our contact info real quick.
Cool. Thank you. And then what would be your one takeaway? If you feel like business owners, what do they need to know?
Yeah, that's a huge question. You kind of stumbled me on the one takeaway.
I can read it. You did a good one.
Yeah, no. Oh, well, I think well, read me what I said. I probably thought about that more.
You did. It's really good. I can read it. Developing and understanding your purpose and what services you provide will create lasting meaning through all the challenges that come along.
Yeah, boom. And I did try to explain that earlier. It's like literally if I went to work every day, and I struggle with this a lot, and I've got to retool my brain. But if I just thought, I've got another 78 kids to see. I mean, we schedule 80 kids a day. And so it's just so many parents, so many different perspectives. We're dealing with money issues. We're dealing with hard procedures. We're dealing with kids who are afraid. Like it would get really, really overwhelming really fast. And if I didn't have an underlying purpose through the whole thing that I could really kind of ground myself in, I wouldn't keep doing it. I would have to get out of the industry and shift. And it's not that that's not an okay thing to do. It definitely is. There's room for business owners to pivot.
Yep.
But guess what? If you've signed the note, you got to at least figure out what your exit plan is before you do that. And you can't drive yourself crazy. And so finding your purpose that really gives you strength through the whole process, I think is wise time to spend. And if you don't know how to do that, talk to myself, talk to people like you. And, I know that we are happy to help you figure out what that purpose is.
For sure. That's some really great nuggets. I'll tell you what, if you're listening to this podcast and you've been following along, there's some great information out there. Some great people that are pouring into you. And just look at the ones in your community too. Look where you're at and see who you can look to for a mentor in a particular area of your business that can help you along the way, or personally as well. Not just business, but personal as well. We all need that. It's not, don't live in your silo. There's that pride. Break it down. And just go and say, hey, look, this is where I'm struggling. Let me find someone that can probably help me in that field.
Yeah. And I will add one thing. We often look outside of our home, and in reality, the people who care most about us, whether it's our children or our spouse, my wife, Adanya, is incredibly discerning of things that I should know about myself before I know them. But you look for mentors outside because they have titles or you think that they have certain things. And yet God's given you people even within your home. Yeah. Sometimes your kids can sense things in you before you sense them in yourself. Your spouse does the same thing. And so I just, I'm incredibly grateful for Adanya where she speaks into me. I'm learning to listen earlier, because sometimes you think, oh, you don't understand, or, you've had experiences
that's an ongoing struggle.
Oh, come on. Yeah. But I think embracing the people that God's already put in your circle too, you're not having to constantly look out of it.
Yeah.
I love that.
That is
That's
so
great.
Important. Yes. Usually they sense it, and sometimes they're scared to talk to you about it. And if you just ask, you'd be surprised at what you hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. My kids are always the first one to tell me that I'm grumpy. Yeah, they know. Well, cool. Thank you. So we are going to link all of your stuff in the show notes of our podcast, and you filled out our little profile. So if you go to the Business Project podcast.com, then you can see all of his information there. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for your
being
time.
a guest.
And once again, thank you for this gift to the community. I think as Clarksville grows and as this business project is applicable to no specific general locale, but even to our community, to give people who maybe have a vision, they have the wonder gift, and yet they don't know how to act on it, giving them very real, practical steps, putting some shoe leather on it, as the old heads would say, is such a gift. And so thanks for all the effort that you've both put into making this happen.
Yeah.
For sure. And same to you. I mean, your podcast is touching lives every day. The people that you bring on there have so much to share. So, I mean, it's enlightening that there's so many people in our community that are doing great things, and being able to share that. They're not holding it in.
Yeah.
We're sharing it, and that's what it's all about, bringing the next generation up.
Yeah.
Lifting each other up. That's what I said on your podcast. That was my one takeaway, is that we can lift each other up.
That's right.
We don't have to step on somebody to get to the top. Cool. Well, thank you guys. We hope that you were just as blessed by this conversation as we were. We are so excited about the future interviews that we have. This is such a great segment. And so you guys stay tuned. We can't wait to see you again next week.
Take
Bye.
care.